This is the I Read Comic Books podcast. I am your host, Mike Rappin. With me this week, two pretty stellar individuals, Nick White.
Hey.
And Brian Murray.
Hello.
Thank you both for joining me this week. I'm a little out of sorts because I dressed up as a giraffe last night, ran around and drank way too many beers. So I apologize in advance if I sound like a crazy person, because I was a crazy person last night. How are you guys doing this week?
Wow, I mean...
It's Halloween. This is like a Halloween episode. This episode's actually coming out on Halloween, so we need to be...
It's Halloween.
God damn it, Brian.
Xander, leave it in.
Well, Brian's off the show. Hold on, everyone. We're going to find someone else.
We just have to do something spooky.
We have a zero-tolerance policy now.
Yeah. So, I mean, how have you guys been? How have comic books been? That's the go-to question. But how do we make it spooky?
Well, I think we should start with Nick.
Let's start with you, Nick.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's
start with you, Nick.
Let's go to the guy that's really going to get on board with this dumb concept now. I mean...
hold on. Okay, hold on. We're going to restart the whole show. Mostly because we got to stop talking over each other. We got to, because I keep getting yelled at for doing it. We got to stop doing it. So, let's start again. There was so much yelling and screaming, mostly on my part. Let's do it again. This is the I Read Comic Books podcast. I am your host, Mike Rappin. With me this week, two pretty stellar dudes, Brian Murray.
Hello.
And Nick White.
Hey.
Thank you guys for joining me this week. I apologize if I'm out of sorts. I was running around dressed up as a giraffe last night, and I drank a handful of beers and watched some basketball and baseball. So, it's a whole crazy, scary world out there that I'm participating in, because that's very much not me. But how have you guys been?
I've been good. Just been trying to stay warm. This whole fall thing is really starting to settle into our bones here in Michigan.
Oh, yeah. I got a very stiff breeze that hit me in the face last night, and I was like, oh, it's time. It's fall.
And that, it's been, I'm just kind of working back through my comics backlog. You know me. You know how I like to let weeks and weeks of comics pile up and then try to read them all in an afternoon.
Right.
I don't remember a whole lot about what I read, except that I got through those three, the Infinity Warps books that I had picked up, the Iron Hammer, Weapon Hex, and Soldier Supreme.
Good God.
They're all okay. It's like, they're just character intros, basically, and I did learn a little bit more about where these characters came from. So it sounds like, and I don't want to spoil the Infinity Wars thing going on, the person who has gathered all the Infinity Stones has folded the universe in on itself, which resulted in characters basically getting squished together. So that's why we have, Steve Rogers and Stephen Strange get squished together into the Soldier Supreme, and we have Iron Man and Thor smashed together into Iron Hammer. It's an interesting concept, but I think that the creators on these books are a little too into it. Like, not every small character in these books has to be a mashup of two existing Marvel characters.
Oh, good God. I didn't know it extended that far. Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah. Like Dum Dum Fury and
oh, God.
Bucky Wong from Soldier Supreme.
I would understand if they were like, oh, look, we're going to fold this C and D list character together, and you're not going to know what's happening. But that sounds just excessive.
Yeah. In Weapon Hex, one of the side characters was like, I want to say it was, oh God, what's Colossus' sister? I'm blanking on her name right now.
Magic.
I think it was Magic and Sabretooth smushed together.
Sure.
It's tough to tell.
Okay, whatever you want to do, Marvel.
Yeah, so I mean, it's dumb and weird, and these books don't really tell any stories. They're just sort of, these are who these characters are. I'm assuming that if I was actually keeping up with the Infinity Wars stuff going on, it would make more sense. Like, I'm sure they've been appearing in there and actually doing story things. But all I got out of these books was, this is how, Sigurd Stark made his armor with Eitri, the dwarf.
Oh, so this is just really basic. Like, if you wanted to know more about this character from a weird book, pay $4 to find out.
Yeah, pretty much.
Gotcha. All right, I probably won't be checking those out unless I get like a super omnibus deal where I can. I'm not going to read any of that stuff unless unless there's like a super duper sale where I can get it all for $1 or something.
Yeah, I bet that at some point a big Infinity Wars trade is going to come out, and it'll probably have some of this stuff in it. So
Gotcha.
That's probably the best way to consume it. I also read Spider-Geddon number 2, which continues to be Spider-Geddon. I don't really have a lot to say about it, except if you like the concept, you will also like this book.
Gotcha. But are you saying that you're not turned off by it yet?
No, I'm still enjoying Spider-Geddon quite a bit. It's
Cool.
just one of those things where I recognize that the big Spider book crossover event is probably not going to be for everyone.
Oh, okay.
And especially because it's one of those Marvel things where it's tying into 30 different properties, and I'm scrambling to pick up all of them.
Gotcha.
They're like, Brian is the perfect specimen in this situation for Marvel. They're like, yes, this is exactly what we want. Meanwhile, Brian over here is like hardcore self-loathing. Yeah, I mean, I guess if this book is okay if you're a big piece of fucking garbage that, big, just dumpster for Spider-Man books, just shovel it all in there. I'm a glutton for punishment. And everyone's like,
I am.
I was gonna read this book, but I don't know. Then it's like, Brian, are you reading these? And it's like, yup, all of them.
It is fun though. These are fun spider books.
Okay. I hope that someone out there will take that middling review of Spider-Man.
It's a poll quote. That's going to be the poll quote for the trade.
Yeah.
There'll be a much more detailed review once I've actually read all of it.
Yeah, full report. I'm still holding on to that.
Probably
Every
on
time
Patreon.
Spider-Geddon comes out. Yeah, it'll probably be on Patreon. That's going to be the whole thing. Anyways, Nick, how have you been? How have comics been? I realize I didn't ask that question to Brian, but he knew what was up.
Yeah.
It's like I've been on this show before.
Maybe.
I don't know, Mike. Like you led into this whole thing with you watching sports, and I'm still trying to wrap my brain around that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I realize you led into that with you running around New York in a costume well before Halloween and, tales of debauchery, but that's not the part that I can't shake. It's you, like, with a big foam finger on your hand and the construction helmet with beers, taped to both sides and,
but somehow also a giraffe. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's not to say I didn't do things this weekend, but after you told me that, it's like, does any of it matter at that point? Like, do we matter as people after that? It's like, very existential.
It's Halloween, man.
Yeah.
You gotta gotta do something spooky. And I did.
This is Halloween, as the kids at Hot Topic say. Before they pay $40 for a Jack Skellington beanie. Oh God.
Anyways, how have you been?
Yeah,
Nick? How have comic books been?
Things are fine. Had a real fucking banger of a weekend and watched some new Great British Bake Off, so you can tell things were off the chain. Woo. And I do like Noel Fielding as a host, and if you don't, you can fucking fight me on that. So that's that.
Oh.
As
Nick's Twitter account is private for a reason.
Yeah, it's
folks.
probably for this.
Some
it's
hot
like
takes.
I mean, I realize the Mighty Boosh isn't for everybody, but like, come on. As for what I read, this is Nick White once again providing a report on a new number one, because that's the shit you guys need. And I did read Stranger Things number 1. I suppose it's fitting that with the second issue debuting this week, that we'll have a Stranger Things issue arriving on Halloween. I guess that makes sense to me. So some of you might recall I made some predictions about this issue a few weeks ago. I tried to be positive. I said the creative team looked good. I ultimately really didn't know what Jody Houser was going to do in terms of telling a story of Will's time in the Upside Down. I was kind of like, what can you do with that? I don't know. And I'm here to tell you that I was tentatively right, not because I'm one to relish the moment, but rather because me being right happens so infrequently. So I think Hauser was smart enough to have Will turn to his experiences with D&D as sort of a guiding force for what he should do. It sort of allowed her to tap into her turbo geeky nature, and allowed us also to get more, we got to see more familiar faces than just Will's, because we have these sort of flashback scenes to some of the D&D going on and stuff like that. So, we get to see some of that. If you're a cynic, you will look at that and say that it's just padding the story with retreaded fan service, so that the narrative doesn't even really have to go anywhere because it's already too busy having to retread all of this shit. And I guess the most important thing really to say here is that it is just number one. Maybe things will change, but if you're the sort of person that really strongly believes in the idea that you need to be hooked with a number one, I think this book is not really going to be for those sorts of people. Like, maybe if we'd never seen the Upside Down before, it would matter more, but all we end up really seeing are the flip side of moments that we've already seen. Like, if you've seen Stranger Things, minor spoilers for season 1, we know that 11 does spot Will in the Upside Down at one point, obviously. Mm-hmm. And now we just see that. That's it. We just see it happen. We know that he tries to communicate with our world, and in that regard, we see him pick up a walkie-talkie in the Upside Down and try to, ET phone home into ours. That doesn't mean, like, we're not better people for having seen these things. Like, these things happened off screen, and no one was like, geez, I really wish I knew what it was like when Will stared at 11 in the Upside Down for 5 seconds. I would be a better person if only I could have, seen that happen. So, I don't know. The other last thing I want to quickly say is visually, Stefano Martino's art has sort of a flat European aesthetic that's going to maybe not work for some American readers. I think for the more low-key moments, it works fine. For some of the more action-oriented stuff, I don't know. Ultimately, it's the supporting team of like Nate Picos on letters and Lauren Affey on colors, two of the most underrated people in their respective fields, that I think really bring this book together. But we'll have to see what happens with the second issue. I was not super floored with this.
Okay. I mean, I feel like this is one of those licensed books that is kind of there to say, hey, we could potentially sell something about this series, right?
Yeah, this book is unfortunately for me, and again, I can't say this enough, this is only after issue 1, for me it kind of sets things back in terms of all the work that I think really good franchise books have done in recent years. This does not feel like it's in lockstep with those. Gotcha. The other book I just want to briefly go over that I read Harbinger Wars 2 Aftermath number 1. That's right. Mm-hmm. I refuse to read books unless they have 2 numbers in their titles. This is written by Matt Kint, pencils by Adam Polina, colors by Diego Rodriguez, letters by Dave Sharp. This book was actually a bit of a letdown. I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer here. I realize this is kind of 2 in a row, but I do want to actually point out that Valiant doesn't always knock it out of the park every time. Adam Polina's art feels different than it was for Secret Weapons, which I guess makes me equal parts disappointed and impressed, because A, I'm disappointed because I would have liked the art he did for Secret Weapons, but B, if that means that he was told to basically imitate Raoul Allen's style for Secret Weapons, like, color me impressed, because he did a great job at that point. Most of this issue didn't even need to be read. Like, the whole point that's being ground into our heads is just that Livewire is in big trouble. And we knew that from issue number 1 of Harbinger Wars number 2. So basically the issue hops around all of the major players from Harbinger Wars 2, which, I mean, it's titled Aftermath, so what do we fucking expect is going to happen, I guess? Mm-hmm. And everyone seems to be a little bit older, a little bit wiser. It's sort of like at the end of the 80s TV special on drugs, where everybody quarter turns to the camera and goes, don't shoot heroin up in your arm. I hope we all figured that out as like the life lesson. And basically, Exo seems like he's not as rage-filled as before, and Peter is like this super fucking yogi master of Zen character now. I don't know. the only thing that I think it really does basically is Bloodshot has some sort of an episode and goes, holy shit, like the last 20 years of my life have been fucking insane. And basically they're setting up Bloodshot Rising Spirit as we get the origin story there. But kind of a weird issue. I don't know, guys. Maybe I was just reading all the wrong books this week. I was sitting on Black Hammer number 5, but I was like, I need to treasure that book for later, so I didn't read it.
That's unfortunate because it was really good.
Yeah, oh man, I believe it.
Well, thank you for briefly going over that last book.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
Hey,
my
it's
definition of
Nick
briefly.
standards.
Yeah.
I know.
Look out.
Well, for me this week, sorry, I'm sorry, Nick. I just, I feel like it's Halloween, and that just comes with mean-spiritedness for some reason.
Look, just use whatever
very much
holiday
channeling
is
the
around
Crow.
the corner to excuse your bad behavior, okay?
Yes. For me, I read very little this past week, and most of the stuff is books that I've talked about a million times over and over, so I didn't want to bring them up. But I did sit down and read Murder Falcon number 1. This is from Daniel Warren Johnson, and the long and short of this book is, with the power of metal, we can defeat all these goddamn demons. Because, I don't know, this book is fucking sane. If you're looking for a serious, just pedal to the metal, non-stop explosions, I don't give a goddamn about what happens to me or anyone around me kind of book, this is Murder Falcon number 1. There is a semblance of story in the middle of it, but ultimately this book seems like a chance for Daniel Warren Johnson to just draw really cool demons getting killed by a falcon that is powered by a guy playing a giant guitar. And you know what? Sometimes that's what you need in life.
I'm picking up a real Tenacious D vibe off.
Yes. Oh, hell yeah. No, that's a great way to describe it. Just like the absurdity of what Tenacious D brings to the table, but turned into a comic book without the weirdness of Jack Black and Kyle Gass. But yeah, the main character is kind of this slightly overweight power metal music player who gets kicked out of his own band because he was kind of a dick to everybody, and he wants to give up playing the guitar until a demon breaks into his apartment and a guitar shows up, and this eagle or falcon shows up out of nowhere as well and is like, play the guitar, and with the power of metal they defeat the demon together. It's really cool. I don't know. I'm going to keep reading this because, 1, the art is incredible, and 2, sometimes you just need some insanity in your life, contained insanity, and that's what this book was. I hope I sold someone else on it. It's really fucking badass. Such a badass book.
I would call myself morbidly curious.
I had that book sold to me at Vault. They were trying to sell that one real hard, and I was like, okay, sounds good.
Yeah. I mean, everybody, I think... A lot of folks, I should say, that I follow on Twitter were really excited about this, but I think it's mostly Daniel Warren Johnson is putting out another book, and the last book he did was Extremity, and Extremity was insane. It was such a good fantasy story that had a lot of heart to it, but this one is a little bit different, and I'm guessing it's a little bit more up his alley of just being wild and crazy and just drawing some really crazy scenes. But anyways, let's talk about comic books that are coming out this upcoming week. Comic books are being released on the spookiest day of the year, October 31st, 2018. So let me know what you guys are reading this week. Let's start with you, Nick.
For me, I'm most excited for Britannia, Lost Eagles of Rome, number 4. This is written by Peter Milligan, pencils by Robert Gill, colors by Jose Villarrubia, and letters by Dave Sharp. And yeah, I've kind of resigned myself to the fact that after nearly 3 miniseries and a dozen issues to its name, Britannia might not ever get connected to the larger Valiant verse, and I guess I can live with that. That's fine. For those unaware of what Britannia is, I guess here's the 5-second summary. Basically, during Nero's reign of Rome, there's this guy named Antonius Axia. He's a war hero. He gets hired by the chief priestess of the Vestal Virgins to go rescue one of their own who was kidnapped and taken to Britannia. He goes to rescue her, basically ends up encountering some sort of a weird demon in the process. It breaks his brain super hardcore, fierce. And in an attempt to repay him, the priestess gives him access to the Codex, which is a sacred text that allows insight into the minds and motivations of humankind. So basically, he understands how like cause and effect and the subconscious and human psychology work, and he's now the world's first detective. And so basically, when everyone's just going around being like, well, you know, that guy was struck with lightning by Zeus, he's basically like, yeah, but what if it wasn't Zeus and what if it was something else? And they're like, this guy's fucking insane.
And then they hang him.
So it's basically him just going around and they're like, oh, these boils must have been caused by a mystical force. And he's like, yeah, but what if it was something else? And they're like, well, like,
Hang him.
What? Let's hear what you've got. And he's like, I don't fucking know, but what if it's something else? And they're like, we kind of fucking hate this guy. Let's kill him. So it's a lot of fun.
I kind of hate him too. He sounds like an asshole.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. It's a good period piece. It's a very sword and sandals kind of epic adventure sort of thing going on. And there's a little bit of mysticism. There's a little bit of history. There's a whole lot of action. And there's a metric fuck ton of gore. Because, you know, everyone's stabbing each other with swords, I guess. And this miniseries has surrounded the whole idea that the eagles, the standards, you know, the banners that are carried. I'm sure anyone who knows Roman history is going to fucking bludgeon me over the head or something, because I'm sure I've got some of this wrong. The big standards that they carry at the front of the army and everything, the banners and whatnot, they've got eagles on top, and those are supposed to have legendary mystical power. And Nero thinks that if they can't be found, he's going to, you know, lose his sway over the people. So I sure hope it happens in the last issue. So that's what I'm pumped for. I would definitely recommend it, especially for people that maybe aren't big on wading into the larger Valiant verse. This would be a nice way to get your toes wet, I suppose.
Gotcha. What about you, Brian?
Well, I'm sure this will come as no surprise. It's a spider book. We have Vault of Spiders #1 coming out this week.
Did you say Vault of Spiders?
Yes, Vault of Spiders.
A vault? Why is it a vault, Brian?
I don't know, Nick.
Oh.
It's not out yet, Nick.
Oh.
Yeah. God. You're so
Did you look
stupid.
up the preview? Did you, like, I don't know, like, Google it?
I did a little bit of legwork, yeah. It's
Okay.
written by Cullen Bunn with lines by Javier Pulido.
Okay.
Mostly I'm excited about this from what little bit I was able to find about it, because they're bringing back Spider-Man, which is the Spider-Man from the 1970s live-action Japanese TV show.
Why not? I love any book that just goes, why not?
Yeah. He's the one who, like, I'm pretty sure had a spider mech. I could be hallucinating that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's also Web Slinger, which is like Old West Spider-Man, is going to be in it. So I'm pretty sure they're just like...
Is this a character that pre-existed? Is this...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Let Brian get through the description.
They're really
Sorry,
scraping
Brian, go ahead. This is just insane.
They're scraping the bottle of the old spider barrel for this one. But I'm real into it. It's going to be dumb, and I'm going to love every second of it.
Yeah, I looked up the cover, and there are just a lot of spider people on there, and they all look pretty ridiculous, so that looks exciting.
Oh, yeah, Web Slinger has a horse that also has a Spider-Man mask on.
Sure.
Oh, man. Whew, that just tickles me.
Is Pulido the guy that drew She-Hulk?
Yes.
With Soul, right?
Yes.
Ooh, that
So
might look really
be
interesting.
Yeah, I feel like the art might be a little jarring, but ultimately, I don't think that that's bad, because the characters that are going to be in this book from the cover look like they should be drawn in like his very unique style.
Okay,
that's exciting. That, Brian, you have piqued my interest on a book, just a single tie-in book. So good job.
What are you excited for, Mike?
I guess I'm excited for Batman Secret Files #1. I say it that way because for some reason this is getting auto-pulled for me from Comixology, but I'm just going to roll with it. This looks like an anthology series with like a framing storyline about Batman reflecting back on his previous detective cases and Tom King and Michael Janin are going to be writing this and drawing the framing piece of it, where like the flashbacks to present are going to be drawn and written by them, and then all the individual stories are going to be written by people like Tom Taylor, Jordi Belair, and Cheryl Lynn Eaton, with artists Alana Casagrande and George Fornes. Probably
Jorge.
getting that wrong. It's probably Jorge Fornes.
Yep.
So this looks interesting enough. Like, I think it's retelling old stories or telling some just random one-off stories that maybe never happened. But Tom Taylor and Brad Walker, who for some reason Brad Walker is not credited as an artist, but he's in the description. They're going to be doing a story with someone called Detective Chimp. And I'm curious enough to buy this issue just to figure out who the hell that is.
Yeah, you don't know.
It's a monkey Batman?
It's like a monkey Sherlock
He's Detective
Holmes.
Chimp. Yeah, he's the world's greatest detective.
Yeah. He was in DC Metal, I think.
He showed up in Injustice.
He's
briefly.
a real deep
Oh, okay.
cuts favorite, basically.
Gotcha. Well, he's going to show up in this Batman Secret Files, so I'm going to try it. My basic mentality is, okay, sure, let's do this. And if I don't like the first one, then I'll just somehow not get the second one. I don't know if it's getting auto-pulled on Comixology. I feel like I'm kind of stuck on this railroad and I can't go anywhere. But, yeah, unless I want to do some meticulous canceling of my subscription and then resubscribing, I don't know.
That's what they want.
That's
That's what
thing.
they want you to think, Mike. That you're
Sure.
stuck and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Comics, folks.
Yeah. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, and we come back, we're going to talk about something spooky, I think. Spooky enough. Our show this week is a Goodreads Book of the Month pick from all you fantastic human beings out there on the Goodreads group. You voted for it, and so we are reading it this week here on the show, and we are talking about it. I would one day like to do like a live read where we do a full thing about reading a comic, but today we're actually just talking about comics. This month's book was Revival Volume 1, You're Among Friends by Tim Seeley, Mike Norton, and Mark Englert. This was a pretty spooky book, so way to go, folks. October Book of the Month pick. You done spooked me. But let's actually talk about what we thought about this book, because I've read Revival, I think, at least 3 or 4 times, but I don't know about you, Brian and Nick. What did you guys think of Revival Volume 1?
Yeah, this was my first time reading through it. I thought it was very interesting. It's a really cool concept. I think that it's kind of... This is something that we've seen a lot of in recent years. I know there was a Netflix show, I believe it was called The Glitch or something like that, that was about dead people just randomly coming back. And so I know there was another one. Nick,
Definitely feels like the French show The Returned, which did get an American adaptation as well.
Yeah. So I mean, it's certainly not a unique concept, but I did think it was very well executed, and they're doing a really good job of keeping the mystery alive, making you wonder why this happened and what's happening next.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing that always kept me wanting to read more of it, but then I never did. but I mean, we can talk about that. I mean, in a little bit. But yeah, Nick, what are your like initial thoughts at least about this?
Well, I mean, go figure. I'm gonna fixate on the stupid little minutiae here, but
Sure.
I don't know if anyone else read Jeff Lemire's introduction to the book.
I didn't.
Okay, because boy, did we learn a lot about Jeff. It explains a lot for me of what I've seen in his other writing, like the sadness and like, oh man, just the overwhelming feels. I didn't think I'd have to locate this insight into Jeff in the intro to someone else's book, but apparently that's what happened. Holy cow, Jeff has been through a lot. I didn't think I was going to find that out here, but wow.
I'll have to go back and reread that.
Yeah. That aside, this is the first time I've read it. I haven't read Revival before. I actually bought it at some point. I don't know why. It must have been on sale. So I want to publicly thank the readers for continuing to pick books that I've somehow already purchased and have just sat in there in my Comixology account undisturbed. So please keep it up. It's easier on my wallet. Yeah, thanks, guys.
Someday Nick will have read all the books he owns.
Yeah, maybe. Good luck, Brian. I can't let that happen. That's why I don't read all of them. We can't reach a point where it's all been read. But I thought it was well executed. You know, for someone that lives in a not exactly massively populated Midwestern town, I think they nailed the feel of that a whole bunch. And as Brian pointed out, yes, this is something that we've seen similar concepts of one sort or another in all forms of mass media as of late, but that doesn't mean that it isn't done well. I do really like that eventually the book turns into sort of a question of the religious implications of what's going on, which is sort of my jam. Like when the guy in the radio says, you know, quote, "These are Christian spiritual matters," and the other guy says, well, how does that work when they all aren't Christian? So all of the fun, you know, issues that come about because of that. But I think they just ought to call this book Wolverinesville, and I say that because it's a book in the remote north where people can't die, and when they do, they just come back angrier than before. So
that's true, because all the revived, or whatever they call them, are now incapable of being destroyed, or
Well, exactly. And therein becomes the question. It's like you start to understand some of the concepts that are being put forward, and then they just keep putting nuances in those, and you're like, well, I'm not really sure. Because at first you're like...
Well, in classic IRCB fashion, we should say
full spoilers.
5 minutes in, full spoilers for Volume 1 Revival.
Yeah, no turning back.
Come on, you knew who we were when you started this episode.
True.
This ain't your first rodeo. But yeah, so you have these people coming back to life, and instantly as things go on, you're like, well, can you die again? And then it seems like you can, but you're not immortal, because it seems like you continue to regenerate, but there is a certain point at which there's no going back. Like, do I have that right? Like, is that your guys' understanding too?
Yeah, it seems to follow traditional zombie lore in that you're okay as long as the brain is intact. Because we do see a point where one of the revived is partially decapitated.
Right,
she
but it
remains
looked
dead
like the brain was intact.
Oh, yeah, but I don't know how much of that is just the way it was drawn. Because it wouldn't have been possible for the scythe to cut the top of the head off like that, while also just happening to skirt up and over and around the brain, you know?
Gee, Brian, you seem to know a lot about scythe-related injuries. I think we're going to have to...
Brian used to be a farmer.
Brian used to kill people.
That's like a really interesting thing. It's the magic. It's like the quote-unquote magic of this world is not explained fully, and I do like that. I think we will probably be rewarded. Hopefully we'll be rewarded by reading the rest of this series and actually figuring out what's going on with that. But, you know, they don't really answer any questions, and in fact, they just cause you to ask more questions by putting these characters in various scenarios to be like, wait, how far can we really take this before they're actually injured or seriously, you know, damaged in some capacity. You know, at the end of the book, I was just kind of skimming through it one more time. You know, Martha, or M, however you want to call her, you know, she was pretty badly beat, and she seemed A-okay because she just starts laughing hysterically. So, like, to what end? Like, how far can you really go? Like, how quickly will these people heal? They heal like extra, like in like a Deadpool fashion, where in like 10 minutes they're back up and running.
Yeah, because
there's just more to be.
We saw her getting up and walking into a car shortly after that.
True. Okay. True. Yeah.
But it is interesting. It does raise the question of, without mortality in the mix, what happens to the human psyche? Because M is clearly spiraling throughout this book, and it's interesting to see how many of these revived are going to lose their goddamn minds over the course of it.
Well, I mean. That seems to be the overarching idea, at least in the first volume, is that the more people, like the more revived there are, the more they seem to say, like, well, what consequences do I have? And as soon as you think of that, like, that is an easy way to spiral, and you see more and more people, I think, fall into that, if I remember correctly.
And beyond that, it gets even weirder because, at least for me, what I couldn't help but notice is that there seems to be sort of an inevitable sense of roid rage that comes about with someone being revived. It almost seems like it's almost like a ticking time bomb of sorts before someone just gets super, super angry and hyper violent. And there seems to be a predilection to that sort of thing. And then also, and this is kind of one of the weird other things I really want explained, there appears to be superhuman strength that comes along with this whole thing. You know what I mean? Like, we have people smashing and ripping off, like, the one lady, you know, beats the shit out of the crematorium, like all the walls and scraping all the panels and everything.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, do you have some sort of powers that come with this? Is it almost like when you get revived, I don't know, like when they mentioned that one woman was burned from the inside as well as the outside, it's almost like I said, is it almost like a time bomb where basically you're just ramping up and accelerating in terms of aggression, in terms of anger, in terms of temperament, before it destroys you from the inside out? I don't know. I think there's a lot of good questions, and the idea that there's some weird biology, element going on is semi-believable in some ways. You know what I mean? Like, it's possible that there might be some sort of crazy biological element going on.
Well, I think that's incredibly clear, like, with the, rapid healing, like the woman who had dentures and then her teeth grew back.
Right.
Like,
but
that,
I'm saying,
like,
it's more science.
Says,
there's actually a science foundation than, like, mysticism, maybe. I don't know.
Sure, and I think part of that, this was always my theory, is that, like, the younger the person was, the more time they had before they started to really go crazy. And maybe, like, Martha, for instance, like, she's pretty young, so her being, a revived or whatever they call them, it means that she's got more time in her life versus, say, like, this older woman who doesn't, because she's, like, in her 70s or 80s. But that's just a pet theory of mine. I don't know.
Yeah.
I need to read more of this book.
My thought on that was more that it depends on your belief system. Like, the old woman who went crazy and yanked out all of her teeth was a pretty strict fundamentalist Christian, it sounded like. And so she believed that these were the end times and that there is an order for the world. She thought that it was wrong and unnatural that she was even there, and that, her teeth kept growing back in. So she was trying to yank them all out to put her dentures in because that's the way things are supposed to be in her worldview. And so I think that, to kind of dovetail with your theory, I think that younger people tend to have more flexible worldviews, and so are maybe better prepared to deal with whatever psychological trauma they're experiencing from being brought back to life.
I feel like no matter what, the missing puzzle piece is that weird ass Casper motherfucker running around in the woods.
I mean, yeah. Well, that's like a whole other thing, right? That's like the supernatural element to this on top of the already strange thing that's happening in this story.
Is it connected? Is it not connected? You know what I mean? Like, there's the real question. And I feel like it's gotta be. It's gotta be connected to everything else, but it doesn't have to be.
I mean, my other question in the book is, if someone dies, are they going to be revived? Like, I don't know. I don't remember if that gets answered in this volume.
It kind of does, because Terry, the old woman's daughter, gets killed.
Mm-hmm. She
does not come back.
It would appear that there was, like, I don't know, a certain window of time during which,
there's like an event.
If you died during that window, you were brought back, and it appears that window was passed. That was my understanding.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And again, I think that this volume does a really good job of giving us enough story, as well as forcing us to ask a lot of questions still, to say, you need to keep reading this book, dummy. And that's totally fine by me. The question is, will I ever do it? As someone who's read this like 3 times, I don't know what stopped me from getting into volume 2. So maybe this is the push that I needed to get into it, because man, Mike Norton's art. I forgot how good this book looks on top of like how well it reads. Because I feel like I sped through reading this, and because it just doesn't stop with the pacing.
Yeah, Norton has a real gift for simultaneously juxtaposing real grounded human drama alongside over-the-top fucking zaniness. I feel like his art style really lends itself to that, because it does, you do feel like you actually are in a Midwestern town and it's not like some cartoon, but then of course he's drawing all of this other shit that's absolutely insane.
Well, this is the same guy that did the series Battle Pug.
And exactly for that reason, you have a mashup of this like Conan looking, realistic, classically, I don't know, looking fantasy warrior alongside this dog. Yeah. I think that's a perfect insight into what we're getting here, because this is the same sort of juxtaposition of the insane alongside, the real, quote unquote.
Yeah. But let's talk about these Jenny Frisian covers for a second. I think we were lucky, at least for me, the digital copy that I had came with all the Frisian covers in the middle of it. So as each chapter, breaks, it had the cover as at the end of each, or at the beginning of each issue. And boy, oh boy, that is someone who can draw real good. Like,
yeah, yep.
I don't know how else to describe it, because it's honestly every single cover to this book is a masterpiece. And I know that I've seen future covers and they're just as good. Like, what a beautiful cover artist they got for this series, and I'm pretty sure she stuck around through the end of it. And that's fantastic to me. Though I do feel like readers, like maybe new people, might have gotten tricked seeing these single issues.
Yeah.
This is one of those cases of like, holy shit, that cover art is beautiful, and then they open the book. And not to say Mike Norton's art is bad, because I truly believe that it's good, but they're definitely not the same.
See, the reason I think they're tricked by the covers is, at least from what I saw in my copy off Hoopla, is that the cover was very misleading about what was going to happen in the issue.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because like there was one where you see the TV reporter, I can't remember what her name is, like sitting lovingly over her dead husband's body on the cover, and I'm like, oh, so she's gonna murder him, and then no, she just finds his corpse, his corpse to be, towards the end of that issue. This book is very gory. If that bothers you, you probably want to watch out.
Yeah, that's very true. And some of it is kind of darkly over the top / morbidly comical, but that's not to say that it still isn't gross.
Yeah, lots of blood.
Lots of violence in general. It's a very violent book, especially towards its female characters. That's something that Stephanie in the Goodreads group pointed out, and as soon as I looked for it, I saw it everywhere. Because violence is done pretty across the board in the book, but we see the effects of the violence almost exclusively on women, and especially on Martha, because there are 2 different shots where it shows in gruesome detail the vicious beating that Martha has just taken. There's the shot, the panel after the bar fight where she has broken glass sticking out of her face and it's all swollen up. And then there's the other one after she's hit by a truck at the very end, where you see, one leg bending the wrong way and just...
She's also stabbed with a scythe.
Yeah, it's to a body horror degree, the damage done to Martha. And I don't know, I think that's the kind of thing that people should be aware of when they're creating media. Like, are we showing a lot of violence towards a group that historically has had a lot of violence done to them?
Yeah, I never considered that. But yeah, that's
because
super valid.
I can just imagine, if in my past I had an abusive partner or something like that, I imagine that seeing this would be very upsetting, because it would remind me of what had happened to me. And
right.
And I'm not saying that, you can only have violence in your book if it's directed against men. Like, obviously, that's stupid and unrealistic. But when you're going to be showing the graphic fallout of violence, just maybe try to be aware of how that could be affecting your readers.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, I think these panels and sequences are also meant to be instructive in terms of the healing / regenerating properties of what's going on, and the fact that she won't die only makes her more likely to have more of these things happen. But I think you can hold both of these viewpoints in your mind at the same time.
Yeah, it's definitely...
And just be mindful of all of it.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that this book in general would have benefited greatly of just having a woman on the staff. Because from what I could tell, it was all male creators working on this book. And there was another point at which...
Aside from the cover artist, yes, I think you're right.
Yeah, but I don't think she's diving into the actual
right.
story.
I agree.
There's another, just like the unrealistic relationship between Dana and Ibrahim. Just where in one panel she doesn't want to know his name, she just wants to make out with him in his car, and then in the next page when they're working together, he says it's cool that we're working together, and she spends most of the page blowing up at him about how she's not going to sleep with him now. And I just don't think the poor guy deserved that. And it just seems like a guy trying to write a woman, if that makes sense.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. It's like overly trying to make it sound like, I don't know. Like it could have easily been. It could have sounded more natural if, like, there had been a woman consulted, maybe.
Yeah,
about the dialogue and maybe the interaction.
I think what gets to me is that it very strongly echoes the "women are crazy, right?" idea.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we don't really necessarily know. Maybe Tim Seeley did run this by some women that he knows, but yeah, I see what you mean though. Some of it feels pretty rough.
It could be, and I don't know, maybe it's just like my backstory because I worked with a group in college about like domestic violence and stuff like that, so maybe I'm just overly aware of it. Mm-hmm. But I don't even end that sentence.
No, that's all right. I wanted to read out some of the other quotes from Goodreads, just because I think there was some positive and some negative. I think overwhelmingly a lot of people like this book, but Danny, he posted in the Goodreads group, he's got mixed feelings about the book. I think my main issue is that what makes it interesting, the mystery about the revivers, is also what takes away from the stakes of the book, which I think is a really interesting point about when we know that Martha's going to be fine.
Yeah.
For the most part, like we never have to really worry about her getting into too bad of a tussle, unless things change.
Yeah, I was going to say.
No, I understand. But like even with the old woman whose head got lopped off or part of it got lopped off, they put the cap of her head back on and everything was fine.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a weird spot, and I think he has a solid point there.
Yeah, for sure. It's hard to worry about their physical safety, certainly.
But I mean, people have argued the same stupid point about Wolverine for how many years, and they've still found ways to.
They killed him one time. And you can drown him.
Yeah, you could drown him. So
yeah, but they killed him one time. He's fucking back again, though.
Yeah, I know. There's 3 of them now.
That's what you get for killing him.
It's like a Hydra.
It's like the Hydra.
They should have learned from Superman. You kill him and more come back. So I mean,
yeah. Anyways, no, I like that point because I don't think I actually considered that when it was like, when you're worrying about stakes. But that's a totally super valid point. Chad from the group had a similar thought that I did, in my notes at least. He said, it's like a horror version of Fargo. Seeley and Norton do a great job of furthering the mystery with each arc, which I think he said that in his Goodreads post that he had read more of it. But that's exactly how I had described it in my notes. I had said, this kind of checks the boxes of kind of spooky, but also very interesting, which is how I would describe something like Fargo or maybe Twin Peaks. And I like that. I'm glad that other people see things the same way that I do.
Thank goodness.
And then one final thought from Paul, not Paul from the show, but another person named Paul in the group. He said, I really enjoyed Revival, horror with supernatural elements. I enjoyed the entire series and I recommend it. And it seems like I said, across the board, the majority of people really enjoyed this book. Which is why this is even more, flame, or even more fuel for the fire that I need to read the rest of this series. So maybe I'll actually do that. That's, I just wanted to get that out there.
Yeah, I think that despite all the concerns I've been voicing, I still really enjoyed reading this, and I am probably going to keep going.
Would you say that it's maybe like there are issues, but it's not so much that it's necessarily distracting you from the book?
Yeah, it's the kind of
the overall
it's
story.
The kind of thing where I'm reading it and I think to myself, God, I really wish you wouldn't do that. But I mean, I think that the mystery of the book is enough to keep me going and just sort of like hoping that as time goes by, my issues will be ameliorated somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, this is a book that's 6 years old, to which I'm like, oh, that means it can be a little shitty. No, that's not really true.
Things were different 6 years ago.
It is, but it is a volume one. Like it's an earlier, it's the beginnings of a series, and I think you can see in a lot of different books, maybe there will be some problematic bits at the beginning that will get squashed as the story goes on. And I think with a book like this that was successful, I would guess that Tim Seeley would have at least recognize some of that from either his fans or other people reading it. So there's probably at least a positive side to that, to say there's a good chance it probably gets better. Those types of issues in the story maybe aren't so obvious. But I have a feeling that the violence is not going to go away, given how this book is kind of played out. I will say that.
That seems right.
But yeah, I guess any other final thoughts about this book? I mean, this is... I think between the three of us, it sounds like we've all got like a positive view, but and we maybe want to try to read more now that Nick and I both are kind of in the situation of, at one point I bought all of this. Maybe I should read it.
Hey.
So,
only volume one from me. There are plenty of other books where that is true, but it is not this book.
Well, Goodreads people out there, now we have to somehow get Nick to read volume 2. So force him to buy it. Let's do it.
It's not going to take
next
much.
October.
Yeah. There's so many lingering mysteries and questions and whatnot going on in this book. I'm pretty interested. I'm curious because I'm certain this book is going to move outside of this town at some point, probably. And I still want to know about that spooky ghost-ass thing in the woods. Now, before we go, I do want to ask this, just for clarification purposes.
Sure.
The spooky ghost that Martha was dealing with, and the spooky ghost that the old man, who's sort of like a ladies' man, who is like a fitness guru, the one he's encountering is not the same.
No, different
right?
ghosts.
That one's like a baby, right?
Yeah, I think there are multiple ghosts.
That's what I'm saying. There's multiple whatevers.
Yeah, because the one that Martha was dealing with kept saying, where's the baby?
And that appeared to be like some old dude's, I don't know, ghost. We don't know what it was. The redneck that wore mostly like Fox dirt bike gear, he seemed to think it was a demon, so...
That fucking guy.
What a fucking piece of shit character in that series. I mean, he's obviously a bad guy.
Look, if anyone wants to T-pose you onto the back of a tow truck, you don't want to hang out with those people. They do not have your best interests at mind.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah.
His introduction to us was him choking some girl out in a trailer for pretending to be possessed.
I wonder if he's definitively dead, too.
We'll find out, but I would certainly expect him to be.
You would think he would be. You would think he would be.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll find some way to keep him around, though. Shitheads like that always seem to stick around.
Yeah, have you guys read Walking Dead? There's this really cool character in it called Negan, and he is the absolute fucking worst. And I say that is not necessarily a dig on the series, but Kirkman keeps him around because of how big of a piece of shit he is.
Right.
He knows it.
And then, of course, the real danger is the longer you keep him around, the more he
the more attached.
Pivots into a weird fan favorite, likable Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, Brian, you got any final thoughts about this series?
I think you should check it out. Form your own opinions on it. I certainly enjoyed it, despite my quarrels.
Well, cool. I'm pretty much in the same boat there. I mean, like I said, I need to read this goddamn series. Everybody in the world has told me I need to read this. So I think I need to actually sit down and maybe go through it. And that means I'm just going to put off my full reread of Chew another X number of months.
Did you hear there was a crossover between this and Chew? Like a
so that's
issue?
the thing. I did know that. So my thought is, this is all maybe coincidental, or like the universe is trying to tell me, Mike, you need to just read them back to back. Read 2 or 3 volumes of Chew, and then just start reading back to back volumes of Revival until they get to that crossover. Because I remember when that came out. Just a little aside here. I remember when that one shot or the 2 1-shots came out. Right, I couldn't believe that of all the series that Chew could have crossed over with, and all the series that Revival could have crossed over with, that were going on at Image, that it was Chew and Revival crossing over. Like, what a weird combination. Like, there are some themes that maybe
over-the-top body horror, left and right.
Yeah, over-the-top body horror, yeah. And I think, the whole detective side of things super works. But what a weird combination, because tonally,
stylistically,
these books are very, very different. And stylistically very different. But, I have read... I think I did read those one-shots when they were coming out because they were in a volume of Chew already, and it actually works really well. I think they're in like volume 9 or something of Chew.
Oh, that explains why I'm not there yet. Okay.
Yeah, but it's funny, and I can't believe that they actually did it, but it's pretty funny. So, anyways, I will. That's the end of my aside. I think I just need to read this book because I like Revival. I just need to actually do it. So let's wrap up here. Thanks to everyone who reached out on the Goodreads and actually read this book and commented. Good or bad. We appreciate that you guys are actually spending time and working with us on the Goodreads group because we really love doing that. But yeah, you can follow all of us on Twitter. You can follow Brian at BrianHead. You can follow Nick at Death Star Plans. You can follow me at Mike Rappin, and you can follow the show at IRCB Podcast. We retweet stuff and we post polls. I haven't posted this week's poll yet, so I don't know what it's going to be.
You can also check out the Goodreads group for more Book of the Month discussions like this, as well as our weekly threads. Our most recent thread is, what is your Halloween media traditions? You can hit us up at our website, ircbpodcast.com, where we have a pronunciation guide and a new merch store.
Beyond that, go ahead and rate and subscribe our show on iTunes. More listeners means better ratings. Of course, we'd love to get 5 stars from you. If you're not going to give us 5 stars, you've made it all the way to the credits of an episode, so what the heck is going on with you? In addition to that, email our show, ircb@destroythecybe.org, and also subscribe to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/IRCB podcast for exclusive audio, early access to episodes, and cool stuff like episode show notes.
Infinity Shred is the best band in the universe. They do all the music for our show. They are so fantastic, and I think they have a new album coming out. You should all check them out on their website, infinityshred.com. Xander is a pure being of light who has a human manifestation in which he blesses us every day with his presence. He also edits the show. He's a really nice guy. I want to say thanks to Brian and Nick for being on the episode. I want to say thanks to everybody who commented on the Goodreads thread and everyone who's been reading along with us and participating in our huge reading list that we have for the whole year. I think we're doing a big thing. We might be doing giveaways of Comixology gift cards. I'm not sure. But until next time, may the great skies above bless you with some cool comics this upcoming week. All right, we did it.
We made it.
I forgot to ask you guys in the episode, so just go over this with me because I need this explained. Okay. Where to believe that M got murdered, and yet all of this happened so quickly that no one ever realized that she was murdered?
I'm guessing whatever event happened in the book.
Yeah,
she was murdered the night that the event happened.
Right.
Yeah. My theory is that she was killed by the professor she was having the affair with.
That almost seems too easy, but I mean, maybe that is what... God, that would be... I don't know.
Yeah. I don't think that her murder is actually the big mystery of the series.
Sure.
Anyways, I think that's probably something they solve pretty quick on in order to explain.
Well, I also
more
don't
of the whole revivals.
I still kind of consider her sister the main character more than I consider her the main character. So
yeah,
I think
definitely.
it's more
same
of
here.
a side plot. I don't know. I just found that all very confusing because, her dad's talking about, I think something like, don't hang out with those revivalist people and don't bring your sister around them because, they've got a penchant for rage and everything. And we know that there's like 23 of them or whatever. And like, he keeps talking about all this revival shit. And yet he doesn't seem to be aware that this is something that also happened to his daughter. I don't know.
Well, that's the whole thing about it is it happened. She doesn't remember.
Yeah, I guess.
But she tells her sister, and she's like, "Hey, don't tell Dad." By the way.
Yeah, I guess this happened.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think she's one of the only revivers that people don't know that she's a reviver.
Well, I was going to
least
point that out
initially.
too, because obviously there's a quarantine, and yet you see her going off to college, and I don't know to the extent to which the scope and scale of this quarantine is, or where her school is relative to this. But
yeah, the quarantine seemed to be like around the county almost.
Yeah. So yeah, when I saw her go back to school or whatever, I was like,
But that to Brian's point, that would make the most sense because it's a rural city, so it's not like they could put it around the city limits because that's kind of big. But a county-wide quarantine would make way more sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll find out. We got to read volume 2. Come back to it. The IRCB personal book club between Mike and Brian and Nick. We talk about revival.
It's just Revival. It's the new show. It's a spinoff.
I read revival books.